Okay. Respected President of Dr. K.N. Modi Foundation, Professor Dr. D.K. Modi sir, our Chief Mentor, Professor Dr. R.K. Khandal sir, our Vice President of Dr. K.N. Modi Foundation, Captain Rajiv Saxena sir, all eminent dignitaries of Dr. K.N. Modi Foundation, our expert guest, Mr. Ashutosh Gupta ji, who is legal practitioner as well as company secretary. Welcome you, sir. Our esteemed alumni, Mr. Vineet Goel, who is CMD alumnus of batch 2015-17, is also a wealth manager at ICICI Bank. Welcome, Vineet.
Thank you, sir.
All our respected faculty members, students, all eminent guests as audience of this webinar. Normally what happens that every business organizations operate in an environment, and environment which we call as business environment is completely dynamic as well as complex. We call it dynamic because it keeps on changing, and we call it complex because there are numerous factors in the business environment. They affect businesses and organizations with different magnitude. So every organization has to adjust itself. We are required to adjust our business strategies in accordance with the environment. We have to restructure our organizational design. We have to rethink our business model. And depending upon the expansion and contraction of the economy, we have to restructure our corporate finance. So the topic of today's webinar is restructuring of corporate finance and distress merger and acquisition, with a special reference to present challenges and growth opportunities. I congratulate and extend my best wishes to our faculty expert of corporate restructuring, Dr. Karuna Gupta ma'am. I request you, ma'am, to take this webinar further. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you, sir. Yeah, thank you, sir. Am I audible?
Yes, yes, ma'am.
Hello. Yeah.
Yes,
a very good morning. A very good morning to all dignitaries. A very good morning to all dignitaries, members from all faculty, fraternities, and my dear students. I, Dr. Karuna Gupta, Assistant Professor at Center for Management Development, feel privileged to host this webinar on restructuring of corporate finance and distress mergers and amalgamation. Before proceeding further, it's a protocol to share the itinerary of our webinar amongst all of us. Here, the introduction part of corporate restructuring and its various means and methods are presented by Ms. Aditi Nidhi, PGDM final year student, working as an Associate Global Financial Analyst in SunGuard Availability Services, Pune, which is being followed by Mr. Gaurav Goswami, deputed as Motor Vehicle Inspector in West Bengal Transportation Department. Thereafter, we have with us our esteemed alumni, Mr. Vineet Goel, who's working presently as a wealth manager at ICICI Bank. This webinar will take further by Mr. Vishal Agrawal, placed in ICICI Bank as Deputy Manager. And last but not the least, we have with us we have with us Advocate Ashutosh Gupta ji, who is one of the key speakers for this webinar. Sorry for the disturbance. See, corporate restructuring is an expression that connotes a restructuring undertaken by a business enterprise for the purpose of bringing about a change for the betterment and to make the business competitive. Here the term signifies the restructuring process which is undertaken by a company, and here a company secretary plays a predominant role in devising, in executing, in designing, and completing the overall restructuring process for n number of corporate houses. Here, the decision to undertake this corporate restructuring of a firm may encompasses a broad range of activities and includes the acquisition and divestiture of lines of business and assets. Moreover, it includes the acquiring substantial shares in another companies alteration in the capital structure through the variety of financial engineering initiatives, and also affecting the internal streamlining and business processes re-engineering to improve the efficiency and effectiveness of the firm. See, what we have seen in this era of COVID-19, an effective corporate restructuring can lead to changes among one or more of the following factors. The main factor which I want to focus over here is number one is the assets and the portfolio mix of the corporate house, which need to get themselves restructured. Next, we are talking about the capital structure, or we can say the capital mix of the company, which involve the proposition or the combination of the assets and equity of the company. Moreover, it includes the denomination with which the shares has been issued to the investors or the shareholders. Last but not the least, the management and the organizational structure of the company is one of the important factor in reorganization of the corporate houses. It is well-known fact that with the changes in business environment, most of the corporate houses need to reposition themselves on periodical basis. And they have to revise themselves on the basis of all the market segments served, the value offered to their target customers, and many more. The all-in-all aim of all such repositioning is to sustain the relevance and to remain profitable over the long haul. What we have seen during this pandemic of COVID-19, certain business houses may consider restructuring themselves. And for restructuring, they first need to restructure their asset and the capital mix. In this webinar, we set out certain preliminary and legal issues for the businesses to consider in the context of any proposed corporate restructuring. That's all from my side. Now, I would like to invite Ms. Aditi Nidhi to proceed it further.
Thank you, ma'am. I would like to share my screen first. So give me a minute. Is my screen visible to each and everyone?
Yes, it is visible.
Yeah, Aditi, it is.
Thanks to each and everybody here. First of all, I would like to say thank you to CMD and Director Sirs, as I have only seen webinars till date, haven't given any. So this is the very first webinar that I'm going to give. So already going to say advance sorry if I'm going to do any mistake in future. And thank you, Karuna ma'am, as you have already given the guidance to us towards which our webinar is going forward to. The webinar is restructuring of corporate finance in distress M&A, growth opportunities and present challenges. Now, like in the current scenario of COVID-19, we are already seeing that there is so many challenges which a business environment is facing. But what we have studied in the whole business environment subject, the change is the only constant. If a business needs to survive and make itself profitable as well as at least stable in the market, it has to go according to the change in the business environment. So this is a time to show how a business is adapted to the nature, as this is a scenario where nothing is going as we have planned earlier. The businesses are also foreseeing many of the uncontingent things which they haven't foreseen earlier, but now they have to cooperate with it in order to make their stability and survival alive. So as ma'am have already introduced the topic corporate restructuring, this topic basically means restructuring of the corporate world, not corporate world, particularly business. So restructuring means rebuild. Rebuilding can be consist of the entire building change, or it can be consist of internal matters or as a whole. Like you can change your process operationally, legally, or some financial change or some contractual change. Any of the change will consider into a part of corporate restructurings. Now the question arises, why corporate restructures itself? This is the biggest question, that if I have already planned a specific draft of my business, why I'm going to change it in the future? So the answer of this question is for the change. And change just because things are not always the same at the particular specific period of time. These used to change over the span of time. So there are n number of problems a business can face, but all what I have sorted it into two parts. One is monetary problems and another are non-monetary problems. Firstly, there are n number of reasons why a business go for corporate restructuring, reducing cost. Nowadays, companies are not as much as earning profit as they are spending. They're providing salaries to their employees. They are providing rent to their flats and houses, which they have already taken on rent of the buildings. So, but the operations are not going on as they have to go. So somewhere the cost is going to increase and the profit which they are getting is going to decrease. So in order to reduce the cost, they can go for the method of corporate restructuring. Second thing is focus on essential products. Rather than focus on various dimensions, they must focus on the single line which they are dealing in as a central product, so that they can more focus on the particular product and gain the profit out of it rather than making more of the thing stabilize. Third is spin off a subsidiary operation. So if something is not as much as necessary to make their survival alive in the long run or medium run, they should spin off it for as of now. Now the question is, which corporate restructuring mechanism is most suitable? As I have already told you earlier that there are two types of problems. One is financial and another is non-financial. So for companies who are in financial distress, like I totally agree that those companies who are operating on a large scale have already made themselves with full of reserves, some of back debts reserves and some of general reserves. They have already kept so much fund so that they can make their survival existence for any longer, at least till this pandemic going. But for the small scale companies, this is very difficult to make their survival alive even for a medium duration or a short term duration. So rather than going for insolvency, I would suggest they should go for any of type of corporate restructuring methods so that at least they can make themselves survive in this pandemic and go through this pandemic by merger or acquisition or go into any takeover. Now the another case is not any financial distress. Obviously, if there is no such financial problem you are facing, still companies go for corporate restructuring. But why? Obviously, there must be any reason. So therefore, they go for such corporate restructuring method in order to make their position higher than now. The companies do not only face financial problem, reputation, goodwill, branding, positioning. These are certain things of, these are certain kind of problems which a company do face. So in order to reorganize its operations, a company can also go for corporate restructuring so that it can get a competitive advantage. We have already heard a lot of competitive environment in the market. So a competitive edge will be given by this corporate strategy method. Now challenges in front. Nobody thinks of changing themselves if there is no challenge. If I take an example of particularly me, if everything is going very smooth in my life, I won't think about a change in me. Same as the business. If a business won't feel there is any change in the environment and we are not facing any difficulty in the environment, why would I change? So now I would like to list some challenges because of which nowadays businesses are thinking of getting a change, and this is somewhere expecting that because of this coronavirus and this COVID-19 pandemic, there are more number of mergers and acquisition cases we are going to see in near future. First is business sustainability. As I have already talked about stability words several times, to survive in this pandemic and to make their sustainability alive, a business can go for corporate restructuring. For a small scale businesses, to maintain their stability is very difficult nowadays because their cash flow management is totally crashed. The inflow of cash is totally low, and the outgoing is as per which was going earlier because we are having some fixed cost, that is like rent, like depreciation. We are already incurring it in advance. Does not matter our operations are going smoothly or not. These sort of things we are already facing right now. So for small scale businesses, they aren't having a huge amount of reserves with them. They're facing very much difficulty. So this is suggested to them that they should go for any merger, acquisition, takeover, joint venture with the company, with the large scale companies under them at least, so that they can make their survival for any longer. Liquidity management. Liquidity is more associated with cash. Right now, businesses are running out of cash somehow. As we have seen this in the IT sector in 2000s. when the technology companies are running out of cash and they are just indulging so much into grasping the loans, and again it was leading into bad debts. So this is the situation of liquidity management. To make yourself resilient from its consequences, a company must primarily in advance, they should take care of their modules, what they are taking. They should take care of the modes, the operation, they should take care of the performance which they are taking. Not every company goes on the similar formula. Everybody have the own formula of running a business. So this is very suggested to the businesses to change their formula of liquidity management so that they can make the cash associated with them and make their survival. Contractual obligation. No business goes standalone. Every business needs several parties to run. So this is like win-win situation for everybody if the business is going successful. And this is like lose-lose situation to one another. If a business, if I have invested in any business and that is going into losses, does not matter. The only owner is going to be affected. I'm also investing, I'm also going to be affected. So this is a like of contractual obligation. Like a business is already having a contract and compliances with several parties, like its debtors, its creditors, borrowers, banks, and others. So somehow this is highly expected that there is lot of chance that businesses are going to renegotiate their terms and conditions with the debtors and creditors in order to make themselves somewhere safe from all the penalties which they can occur due to the breach of contract. If I'm not going to tell my debtor and creditor that see, I'm going to change my business in the long and medium term, I'm going to merge myself with this company, and suddenly I go with this fund, what they will do? They will ask for their benefits. They will ask for where the information is. There is an information disclosure formula. So before entering into any new contract, you must be making all the parties aware that what you are going to do and why you are going to do and how every party is getting benefit from it and how every party is not going to suffer any loss due to it. Then comes operational disability. If every of the three topics which I have read earlier is not going in the flow, operations are not at all going to be in the flow, because operations is somewhere regarding the smoothity of the business. If somewhere our cash flow management is bad, how I would like to manage my operations? Debtors and creditors are not going to recover their amount on the specific period when they are going to recover X amount. So they are going to suffer huge losses or kind of delays in the recoveries of receivables. So this is the operational disability. These are sort of challenges which I'm telling right now. Business discontinuance. This is the very last option. Though no business thinks of disclosure, but this may be inevitable in the medium and long run because businesses don't go on what we see. Businesses goes on what we do. So if businesses do not take any specific prior measure in advance, they can go for a business disclosure. So I would like to suggest that in case of even business disclosure, they should spend some highly qualitable time into this because there is a lot of analysis is required to make their cash flow analysis, liquidity analysis, reserve analysis, taxation analysis, as well as what are the legal compliances going on in the market. So all the legitimacies should be into consideration with all the points which I have talked, which I have told you about the challenges. After this, I would like to call Gaurav to move this PPT forward. But before this, I would like to say that this is totally up to my perception that every challenge comes with a bundle of opportunities. We should not look to this challenge as a threat. A business should look to this challenge as an opportunity because right now, if I see a valuation, the most qualitable assets are going to be undervalued. So this is a golden opportunity for the business to acquire most qualitable assets with a reasonable price. If they see this threat as a competitive edge advantage, they are going to earn a very golden benefit out of this threat in the near future. So rather than focusing on the threats, a business can explore more of the opportunities which we can or they can get out of this pandemic. Thank you. Gaurav, you can continue.
Thank you, Aditi. Now I'm going to discuss about types of corporate restructuring. First one is merger. In simple words, merger is an absorption of one thing into another. It is an arrangement whereby the assets of one company comes under the control of one company, which may or may not be one of the original two companies. That is, it has its own shareholder. In merger, one of the two existing companies merges its identity into another existing company to form a new identity. Both the target companies transfer their business and undertaking, including all other assets and liabilities, to form new companies. Merger is an external strategy for growth of the organization. Many business firms go for merger instead of internal process of growth because it is easy and quick to implement and quick to get entry into an industry. It also reduces competition and increases dependency. It also increases the growth rate it also increases the company to grow at a faster rate. It also helps the company to avail tax concession and benefits, and also helps the company to enjoy the benefits of finance. Second is amalgamation. Amalgamation is the combination of two or more companies into new single entity. Amalgamation is distinct from a merger because neither the company survives as a legal entity. Instead, a completely new entity is formed to house the combined assets and liabilities of both the companies. An amalgamation is the combination of two or more companies into new entities. The transferor company, that is the weaker company, is absorbed into the stronger transferring company, thus forming an entirely different company. This leads to much larger and stronger customer base, and also helps to form the new company having more assets. For example, we may say that company A Limited and company B Limited merges itself and form a new identity called company C. Third one is takeover. Takeover is another strategy for acquiring the control of the management of another company, either directly by acquiring the shares or indirectly by participating in the management. Takeover is a popular growth strategy. The objective is to consolidate the acquired portion of the market economics of scale, access resources of management, and to help to acquire business chiefly. The regulation of takeover is usually regulated by SEBI Act 1992. Fourth one is joint venture or JV. A joint venture are typically characterized by two or more ventures being bound by contractual arrangements. This contractual arrangement ensures that no single venturer is in a position to unilaterally control the activity of the firm. Joint venture may give protective or participating rights to the parties to venture. Joint venture can be formed between a domestic company and a foreign enterprise to flow the skill and knowledge on both sides. Aditi, please change the slide. Next slide. Fourth one is strategic alliance. Strategic alliance is an arrangement under which two or more firms cooperate in order to achieve a certain objective. The motive behind strategic alliance is to reduce costs, technological sharing, product development, availability of capital, risk sharing, etc. The concept of strategic alliance is to gain special importance in infrastructure sector, particularly in the industry of oil and gas, because this industry requires huge number of capital expenditure as well as technological advancement. The benefits of the strategic alliance are shared in the proportion to the contribution made by each firm in achieving their target. Now the next point is slump sale. When an organization sells or disposes whole or substantial parts of its unit as a going concern for a predetermined amount of price, it is called slump sale. For example, in 2013, Tata Chemicals acquired the business of precipitated silica from Allied Silica Company for a price of 123 crore in order to enhance their focus on specialty chemicals through some sales. Through some sales, we can a company acquire a company through some sales because to avail various tax benefits. And the seventh one is equity carved out. In equity carved out, the parent company sells portion of its equity in a wholly owned subsidiary or to an investor. An equity carved out enables the company to generate cash inflow, which may be used for further investment or can be used to reduce debt in case the company has a loss of debt in its balance sheet. Basically, in equity carved out, the shares of the parent company are sold out to outside investors. And the eighth point is divestiture. Divestiture doesn't deal with acquisition. It frequently examines the recently acquired asset or division of the company. The main objective of is to determine whether the asset or division are fitting well into the overall corporate structure of the company in order to attain maximum value. If it doesn't serve well, then the assets are immediately sold off. And the second last is sell off. And company can take decision to concentrate on core business. Aditi, please change the slide. Aditi, please change the slide. The company can take decision to concentrate on core business activities by selling non-core business division, because this non-core business division is usually not giving enough profit or continuously losing money, thereby reducing the return on the thereby reducing return of shareholders' money. The reason for sale of are to come out of shortage of cash and out of severe liquidity position, to concentrate on core business, to protect the firm from takeover activities, and to reduce the business risk of higher activity. Now the last point is leverage buyout. And leverage buyout is defined as an acquisition of an operating company with funds derived primarily from debt financing by a small group of investors. In leverage buyout, debt financing is typically composed of 50% or more of the purchase price. In other words, it is a mixture of debt and equity component with high gearing. The debt is secured by the asset of the acquired firm, usually amortized over a period of less than 10 years. Leverage buyouts is typically done by investment bankers with financial instruments like high-risk debt instrument, typically known as junk bonds, deferred payment instrument, private placement instrument. Bridge financing is used to acquire all or nearly all the outstanding shares of the company and takes the company private. The typical targets of leverage buyouts includes if the company doesn't have shareholding of more than 51%, if the company is diversified into unrelated areas and thus facing problems and losing money, if the company is earning low operating profits due to poor management and is operating in an industry where there is a high opportunity of growth and profitable, if the company's asset structure is underutilized, and if the company's present management is facing managerial incompetence. These are the techniques and types of corporate restructuring used by management to restructure their organization structure. Thank you. And the next part will be continued by our professor, or Mrs. Karuna Gupta.
Ma'am, unmute yourself.
Hello, am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Hello.
Yes, ma'am.
Oh, yeah, thanks Gaurav and Aditi. Now I would like to invite Mr. Vineet Goyal, Wealth Manager at ICICI Bank, our alumnus of batch 2015-17. Mr. Vineet Goyal is associated with ICICI Bank in Wealth Management, managing a portfolio of about 500 crores and served about 200 high-valued customers across the NCR region. Mr. Vineet Goyal has been awarded a Star Alumni of CMD in 2019, and Mr. Vineet is always be a resource person for our alma mater. Now I would like to welcome you, Vineet, for the session.
Hello, thank you. Thank you for the introduction. It's been a pleasure getting back to the college and being a part of this webinar. So going forward, as been discussed about the topic, topic has been. So I'll brief about what is distress. For starting with what is distressed M&A. So distressed M&A basically means the situation where the company finds itself difficult to cope with in the current scenario, and it is full of debts, and it's not able to get the new funds from the banks or any financial institution, and it's find itself difficult to in a situation to run the business, and where it find it difficult to get a situation of near to insolvency. So to save from the debt situation, the various steps comes in for the merger and acquisition. So a cash-rich company gets in to buy the distressed company's assets and liabilities, so that have a win-win situation. So looking at the current scenario, the whole world is upside down because of the COVID outbreak, and people are finding new ways and challenges to fight it. And if we talk about corporate world, so corporate world is also has coped up with this pandemic, and they are looking at the new ways to run the business and to be stable. Whereas the distress is there in the throughout the economy, in the world economy as well. So when we talk about merger and acquisition, so the basically as the Narendra Modi, Mr. Prime Minister of India, also said that it is a time for India first. So this gives us lots of opportunities in the field of merger and acquisitions, as multiple companies from the foreign countries are willing to step up in India and have a joint collaboration with India, as India market has a great opportunity and a great buying strength. So this will be a great future for India in the case of merger and acquisitions, and lots of new things are happening in the law scenario as well. So if we talk about laws and various things in comprising of the merger and acquisition. So all the Ministry of Corporate Affairs, the tax rules, the income tax rules, and the valuation rules are speedily working on it, and they have come with many of the changes, and still they are inviting various advices from all the corporates. So if to name, I talk about valuations, when the where the banks part come in, so every valuation has to be done very in a very precise manner for any company to be taken and to assess its assets and liabilities. Because valuation is a part where it cannot be taken for granted. Because if you don't value a company correctly, so the buying company may end up paying more, or the seller company may end up getting a lesser money. So the valuer has to play an important role wherever a merger and acquisition comes in place. So Valuer Bill 2020 is there in place, in which it also has some regulations for the valuer, and they are fixing some legal and criminal offenses as well if the valuation is fined defaulted by misconduct, or by the intentions are wrong of the valuer. So they are fixing some strict punishment in the Valuer Bill. So the valuer community and the bankers or the other third parties who do the valuation part have to be more vigilant while doing the valuations of the companies going in the coming future and going forward. Now, when we talk about current challenges, so current challenges in the field of merger and acquisitions will be how to get the things valued, and what is the step of due diligence. Because when the due diligence comes, so as everybody is working from home, and there is less of the physical contact, so no one can actually get the real things or the physical access to the company premises or the documents. So everything is digital. So when the digital part comes in, so it can be a little bit of manipulative, or something can be done, but this has to be a question mark on the due diligence part. So it comes a very big challenge for every company, that how they will cope up with the due diligence thing. And in compliance with the law itself, the income tax rules and other laws also plays a very important and vital role, that how they'll pay off their liabilities, what will be the tax constraint in the company. So this all has to be taken care as a challenge, as people are sitting at the remote locations, and the things has to be done, because we cannot delay the things which have to be done. Because as and when the things are get delayed, the buying company will sell on will lose on its shares and its price. So when a cash crunch company loses its time, so it will lose its share and it might get insolvent. So we have, in this situation, we have to get the deal done before it get insolvent, and we have to fund the company in the time remaining. So working from the remote locations for every part of the every part, like a text part or the law part or the vigilant part, so everyone has to be a very coefficient and very proactive in doing the things, working remotely and getting the things done and filed. So even the ministry has come up with a new idea of setting up courts, and they are setting up multiple courts and tribunals to get the filing of the merger and acquisition and get the hearing started. Because basic constraint is that for every merger and acquisition, an average time in India currently is about 6 to 10 months, and that is a huge time in which the whole process takes place. So the basic idea for the corporate industry is to reduce the time of this total process, so that the companies can gain advantage and they can function in a more better way. Now, when we talk about opportunities, so opportunities comes in place of retail's merger as well. So when I say retail merger acquisitions, so currently the time is in the COVID, every supply chain has been distorted, and nobody is getting the things as they wanted, and people are going digital because digital is the way and the social distancing is the way now. So when we come into digital marketing and digital platforms, so people in the retail market will go for the more mergers and acquisitions. And recently, Paytm Mall and Grofers, the two big shots on the digital market platform of the retails, are thinking and getting into action to get a joint collaboration or to buy stakes in the company, so that they'll have a bigger reach to the customers. So why retail market acquisitions will be helpful? First, in the COVID outbreak, every supply chain has been distorted and they are not functioning as well. So customer is losing the trade value and the brand value. For example, if we order something today and the supply is not there, so we end up buying from someone else, and we lose the customer for the brand. Brand it loses the customer. So we shift to some other brand. So by the help of acquisitions, when the people will jointly come into business, so they'll give more expansion to their channels, they'll give more expansion to their network. And by this, they'll have the more expansion into the territories. For example, if a company, if I talk about Grofers is currently in metro cities and not into the interiors of the nation. Whereas when I talk about Paytm Mall, it is a pan-India network, and Paytm has been into the reach of interiors as well. So when they'll come up together, so both of the parties will have an insight into the narrow markets and into the interior markets of the Indian economy. So this way, both will gain. For example, if an order of Paytm comes up, and if the current location Paytm doesn't have their supply chain or the labor output, so Grofers might help them buy their things, and they might help them fulfilling that order. So this way, they'll fight challenges of labor, challenges of supply chain, challenges of raw material, challenges of delivery scenario. For example, if a delivery van is going for the Grofers, and Paytm might give their things to the Grofer go down, and both the companies will get their orders delivered. So this way, merger and acquisition has to play a good vital role in the retail segment as well. Now, if I again, so this will help how the retail market will go on. This is why the multiple retail segments are coming up to get a merger and acquisition, so that both have a win-win situation and they both earn simultaneously. Now, if we talk about challenge, if we talk about how it works in various banking sectors as well. So recently, various PSUs have been collaborated and they have got into one umbrella. So when I talk about SBI, so SBI has collaborated with sister concerns. So there's basic idea of the collaborations were only to get the wider reach and to give us financial support to the sister companies as well. For example, if we talk about SBI, so SBI having a larger reach and being a cash rich and heavy on the deposits. So when they enter into the territories, smaller territories and villages, so they have a buying power to give fund to the assets. So villagers and the farmers were in a good position to be funded by SBI. That is the reason the government has been into the steps of merging the banking and the PSUs as well. This way, we gain on the asset side and the liability side as well. Now, the challenges in the other challenge in the merger and acquisition comes up is from the employee side. All the employees of the merging companies do not find it very suitable for them, or they have some mind blocking that whether what will be their future in that, because you never know, the coming up companies or the board of directors might end up saying that you might lose your job. So the fear of job is always there. But if you do not get merged and you stay out of the merger and you say that we can run the company on our own, so you may end up losing the job for the everyone in the company. But by merging, you may save few jobs and you may retain more than 50 or 60% of the staff of the current company as well. So this way it is beneficial for the employees as well. And this was the same scenario if we talk about Kotak and ING Vysya. So ING Vysya staff was in a very tricky situation, and they were opposing the merger because they were losing. They had speculations that they will lose their job, and only the Kotak people will be working in their branches. But this was this was also cleared by the Kotak, and it was a pre-assurance to all the ING Vysya staff that they will not be laid off, and everyone will be taken as a part of Kotak Bank, and everybody will have a secure job in future. So this way, merger and acquisition has always been a support and been a strong pillar for the corporate restructuring, and it way forward it will remain the strong pillar for the corporate restructuring. No way it can be shaken by anything. And the challenges which are there because of the COVID are also being taken care and addressed at every level in the ministry, at the tax scenario, in the law firms. So everybody is finding their own ways and developing the means to fight the challenges and keep strong the corporate structure and the merger and acquisition going forward in the COVID pandemic. So that will be all from my side. Thank you.
Thank you, Vineet. Thanks for sharing your valuable insight. It's over to you, Vishal.
Thank you, Vineet, sir, for being a part of our
Vishal?
discussion. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, continue.
Thank you, Vineet, sir, for being a part of our discussion. It is really an honor to meet you virtually and hear you after so long. Now, continuing further, we have studied different forms of corporate restructuring as discussed by my fellow batchmates Aditi and Gaurav. Now we are going to study another form of corporate restructuring, that is financial restructuring of Jio with the help of a case study. But before we proceed, let me give you a brief idea about financial restructuring. It is the process of reshuffling or reorganizing the financial structure of a company, which primarily comprises of equity capital and debt capital. So my case study will be focusing upon the significant change in the equity and debt structure in the balance sheet of Jio. Please change the slide. Now, let me draw the format with which I will be explaining my case study to my respective audience. The approach of the case study has been made on the concept of shareholders' wealth maximization, which suggests of increasing the value of a business by increasing the value of shares held by the shareholders. But the question arises, why this concept is so important? This is because the shareholders are the ultimate owners of an organization. They are more interested in increasing their own wealth. So if the shareholders of a company is satisfied, it will be beneficial for a company in the long run. Thus, the most evident form in shareholders' wealth maximization is the positive change in the market price of a company's share. This concept can only be achieved when the third-party liabilities of a company is less than the wealth of the shareholders. So my case study would be focused upon to make Jio debt-free by infusing funds from private equity firms. Thus, in this regard, last year in August 2019, the chairman of the Reliance Industries, Mr. Mukesh Ambani, announced that they are going to make Jio debt-free by the end of March 2021. With the continuous and ongoing capital investment from various private equity firms, the company believed that they are going to make the entire Reliance Industries net debt free by the end of this year. At the end, the relevance of this case study will be cross-checked when we will see the significant change in the positive significant change in the current market price of Reliance just after the announcement of Jio's financial restructuring. In over and all, the case study is all about Jio को debt free करना है by raising capital from various private equity funds. This will help in increasing the wealth of the shareholders, and this can be measured by watching the rise in the share price of Reliance. Change. Please change the slide. Now carefully watch this standalone profit and loss account of Jio for the financial year 2019. It states that the interest coverage ratio is 2.09 times, which has been highlighted in red color. It is the warning signal for the Jio because it is the minimum ratio that is acceptable for any company. तो अब हम इस ICR को समझते हैं. किसी भी कंपनी को अपने कैपिटल एक्सपेंडिचर और ऑपरेशंस को चलाने के लिए डिवेंचर फंड्स रेज करने पड़ेंगे. तो जियो ने इस फॉर्म के लिए डिवेंचर को रेज किया. अब डिवेंचर के अगेंस्ट में कंपनी को एंटर करना होगा. तो आईसीआर वो रेशियो है जो हमें बताता है कि कितना अर्निंग्स कंपनी के पास अवेलेबल है जिसके अगेंस्ट में वो इंटरेस्ट पे कर पाएगा. Therefore, with this 2.09 times, it means that about 50% of the earnings will be paid in the form of interest, which is actually not a good sign for any company. Change. Please change the slide. Now, if we come to the standalone balance sheet of Jio for the financial year 2019, which depicts the financial position of a company, we find that out of the total equity and liability, about 35% are related with the total borrowings, which is about 69,214 crores, due to which the debt equity ratio of Jio is 1.45. The figure means that अगर कंपनी खुद के 100 रुपीज इन्वेस्ट कर रही है तो वो बाहर से उधार पे 145 रुपीज कंपनी के अंदर ला रही है. Therefore, with these two ratios, that is ICR and debt equity, we find that the debentures hold a major portion in the capital structure of Jio, and in order to increase the value of shareholders, it is important to wipe out the third-party liabilities. Please change this slide. Therefore, in order to make Jio debt-free, the company had entered into 5 major deals with various private equity firms from in the last 1 month, that is from April 2020 to May 2020. This has led to the total capital infusion of about rupees 78,832 crores for a total equity stake acquired by these private equity firms in the Jio platform is 17.03%. Now, as of now, the total equity value of Jio is about rupees 4,91,000 crores. This means कि अगर Reliance को आज के डेट में Jio को बेचना है तो they will be gaining rupees 4,91,000 crores from the company which is interested in acquiring Jio. Now, please change the slide. Now, due to the financial restructuring, we can see impact in the share price of Reliance. The entire chart has been divided into 3 timelines. The first timeline starts from 1st April 2019 to 22nd April 2020, which is a period of approximately 13 months. In this timeline, we find that there has not been a significant change in the share price of Reliance. In the timeline second, which starts from 22nd April 2020 to 11th May 2020, there has been a significant change in the share price of Reliance. The Reliance share price has given a positive return of more than 15% in these 20 days. The reason for this drastic change was that the company has entered 3 major deals with private equity firms during this period, due to which the share price of Reliance went to 52-week high on 11th May 2020, which was about 156.1.89. The timeline third, which starts from 12th May 2020 to 22nd May 2020, here the share price of Reliance had declined slightly with a negative percentage of minus 6.12%. The reason for this decline was that on 12th May 2020, the company announced the right offer to the existing shareholders. This is to understand that the right offer increases the total number of outstanding shares in the market, which means the numerator तो same है और denominator increase हो रहा है, due to which the result will decline. However, during this period, the company has entered into another 2 major deals with the private equity firms. The market price had continued to increase further from 22nd May 2020 with the last closing price, which was marked on 29th May 2020 of rupees 1465. तो इस चार्ट से हमको ये पता चल रहा है कि कंपनी की शेयर प्राइस टर्न अराउंड हुए फ्रॉम 22nd April 2020 from the date in which the company has started signing deals from various private equity firms. Now please change the slide. So now at the end, the relevance of this case study can be proved with this chart. In this chart, we can see that from 1st April 2019 to 29th May 2020, the BSE index market has given a negative return of 16.59%, whereas for the same time period, that is for 13 months, the Reliance share price has given a positive return of 6.28%. Therefore, at the end, I would like to conclude my case study with the point that the financial restructuring of Jio has shown growth opportunities to the shareholders of Reliance at the time when the entire world is facing the current challenge as well as threat of COVID-19. Now, the focus will always be remain on the threat because it is an inevitable part of a company because it is situated with the external environment. It is solely depends upon the capability of an organization how they convert this threat into challenges, which brings opportunities for them, which in this case Reliance has successfully done at the time of global pandemic. Now I would like to invite my mentor Dr. Karuna ma'am to further continue with the meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Vishal. Now it's high time to introduce our next key speaker, Advocate Ashutosh Gupta ji. Mr. Ashutosh is the founder of Indo Legal Services, having a vast experience in commercial litigations, corporate law matters relating to mergers and amalgamations. Mr. Ashutosh ji holds the membership of Bar Council of India, Delhi High Court, Supreme Court Bar Councils as well. And sir has advised and conducted n number of litigations before them. Sir, we are indeed to have you with us and eagerly waiting for enlightening our intellect with your valuable insights.
Good morning, ma'am. I'm audible?
Yeah, sir.
Yeah, today we will try to know the in and outs of the mergers and amalgamation and the challenges being faced by the promoters or the companies in getting the scheme through. I know we are short of time. I try to be quick. But before getting to the real challenges being faced by the corporates, I'll take 2 minutes of yours to know the terminologies and the regulators which are involved to get the scheme through. So, my friends, you'll be astonished to know that the word merger, amalgamation is nowhere described under Companies Act, although mergers are done under Companies Act 2013. So, the only word described under section 230 to 234 is arrangement, which only says that reorganization of any share capital. You may add the shares, you may divide the shareholders, or consolidation may be done that way. So you'll find the real meaning of demerger or amalgamation only under Income Tax Act, under section 2. So it is speaks about amalgamation and demerger. Then again, friends, while going for a merger and acquisition, what laws we have to comply with and who are the regulators from which we are supposed to have approvals. So we are listed company, we have to take approval from stock exchanges, listing agreement has to be followed. Obviously, Companies Act has to be taken care of. Again, Income Tax Act, Competition Act, Indian Stamp Act. And if the merger is between the companies which are industry specific, for example, there is a company which deals into telecom industry, then the approval of TRAI is necessary. For insurance company, you have to go to IRDA. Now, we should understand that who can apply for a merger. A company directly can go for a merger, or the shareholders can go for it, or the creditors or class of creditors can apply for it. Or as Aditi told, if the company is into insolvency, so the resolution professional who is now in charge of the company can take a call and can approach National Company Law Tribunal for getting the merger done. So the next question arises, where to file the petition. So as of now, today, there are 15 benches throughout India wherein the petition can be filed. So the thumb rule is where the registered address of the transferor or transferee company is, the petition is filed there. Somehow we can understand if all the transfer company and transferee company are in Delhi, then obviously petition can be filed in Delhi bench. But what if the transfer company is into Delhi and transferee company is into Chennai? Then earlier what the law was, we were filing a separate petition, High Court in Chennai and Delhi. But now there is a judgment filed by the judgment passed by the National Company Law Tribunal. It's a recent judgment passed in December 2019. That is Prism Johnson, which speaks about that in order to curtail the unnecessary litigation, the merger can take place at the NCLT where the registered office of the transferee company is. So in order to curtail all that litigation process, this judgment has been passed. Now we should understand for what reason companies go for merger and acquisition. Obviously, it's not a child's play to go and to spend money on lawyers on litigation, passing the scheme and all. So some idea has to be there. So idea maybe they want to club their authorized share capital, or we can also see mergers and acquisition as a single window clearance system. For example, there are many aspects. If you want to change the object clause of the company, if you want to change the registered address of the company, if you want to infuse more capital, if you want to change the status of the company from private to public, then you need to have a board meeting, general meeting, and get a resolution of minimum 75% of the shareholders. However, the court has termed that this merger and acquisition is a single window clearing system, and by mentioning the same aspect in the scheme, you can get the same approved in a single tranche without following the process of Companies Act. Now, what's the benefit of companies going into mergers and acquisition? For example, we did a merger of a company wherein they were having a tender of construction of roads of 10 kilometers each. So they were having 20 such companies who were having tenders of 10 kilometers each. So we clubbed all those 20 companies in order to make them ready to apply for a tender of 200 kilometers. So it is always a idea behind the mind, or to consolidate the balance sheets or to attain anything, these merger acquisitions are taken care of. Some people also take benefit of the taxation, which is now curtailed by the Income Tax Act. What earlier was the practice was a loss-making company was merged into the profit-making company, and the loss was set off with the profit of the company. Therefore, company was saving tax on the profits being made, which has been now curtailed by Income Tax Act under Section 72A. So now, what's the benefit of mergers? The shareholder of the transfer company has not to pay any capital gain if they get a share in lieu of the shares held in the transfer company, which they'll get in the transferee company. What is the benefit of the company? Company has not to pay even capital gain on the asset transferred to the transferee company. So now coming to the regulators, what regulators and what reports we are supposed to obtain. First, as your first motion petition is approved, a notice is issued by the court to the regional director, official liquidator, register of companies and income tax department. So generally what they see that merger should not be having, or they can halt the merger on these basis. They generally see whether the meetings of class of shareholders creditors has been conducted or not, whether related party transactions are being stated or not, is the provisions of buyback are not attracted, companies in compliance of FAME and RBI guidelines. So they generally check all these things. They generally check ROC basically says no investigation is going on the company, no investigation is pending, no prosecution is pending, and if they find everything in order, they prepare a report filed with the NCLT, and which is finally argued, and the scheme is approved. Now we'll try to understand the challenges being faced by the corporates through the latest judgments. So recently, an order was passed in December 2019. The matter was of income tax department versus Reliance Jio Infocomm Limited. So coming to, I'll narrate the facts first so that we can understand the conclusion. The facts were Reliance Jio Infocomm company was demerging its fiber unit and its tower unit into another company. And what they were doing is they were issuing the debentures to the new shareholders of the demerged company. For these two divisions means hive off to the new company. So what was the view of income tax? Income tax department view was this, that if the equity shares are given debentures, then there will be an additional burden on the company, which will automatically reduce, department will be at loss of revenue. This matter was challenged before Supreme Court, and Supreme Court held that a scheme can be prepared where tax planning can be done, and tax next judgment is of Dalmia Power Limited versus income tax. Again, income tax department was there. So there is a provision, we all are aware, under section 139 of Income Tax Act. If we file an income tax return and subsequently we find there is any omission or there is any mistake in the return, we can file a revised return. So generally when we prepare a scheme which is approved by the court, in scheme we mention that transferee company has all right that when it comes under in the control of transferee company, they have a right to file a revised return of the transferee company. So this company was before the National Company Law Tribunal. The merger took almost 3 to 4 years. So when the merger completed and the transferring company revised the return of transfer company 4 years back, the income tax department denied that return, saying so that the statutory time of filing a revised return is 1 year and you cannot file it. Again, this matter went to Supreme Court, and Supreme Court decided that this thing was a part of the scheme, and the time there is not a deliberate omission on the part of transferee company. So, and being this matter pending before the court for 3 years and being not a deliberate omission, transferee company has a right to revise the return. And in every scheme, income tax department is given 30 days time to file the report. And during the tenure, if they have not pointed out any such issue, then now at this later stage, income tax cannot challenge this proposition. So this petition was also allowed by the Supreme Court. So now coming to the third point, that is valuation part. Valuation is done by a merchant banker or a registered valuer as of now. In previous Act 1956, it was merchant banker who were doing so, but as per now notification, only registered valuer can value for the merger purposes. So what is valuation? Valuation is what when a transferring company is getting merged with a transferring company, so the ratio and the entitlement of shares, what transfer the shareholders of transfer company will get, that is derived from the valuation report. So there was a question that whether the court can go into valuation report or not. So there are two matters. There are landmark judgment. One is of Hindustan Unilever Limited and one is of M.H. Mafatlal versus Mafatlal Industries, wherein it was decided by the court, Supreme Court, that courts are a judicial body and they are not well versed of the complex and basic nature of that scheme. So the court cannot go into the scheme and they will go by the wisdom of the stakeholders, shareholders, and the professional who has prepared it. So before 2013 Act, courts were not going into the valuation part, being commercial in nature, and they feel that it is a contract between a stakeholder or creditor who has proposed this merger, and they should be set free to finalize what shares or what consideration has to be paid. And judges being from a judicial background, not being a financial guy, so they are not supposed to dive into that issue and see whether this valuation report is correct or not. So this was the thing which was going on before this act. But when new act came and these merger petitions are being sent to NCLT for adjudication, so NCLT forms, the bench forms two judges. One is judicial in nature and one is technical in nature. So what the new judge, when this kind of scenario was again examined in the light of NCLT and NCLAT, then NCLAT decided that now we have two judges. One is judicial member and one is technical member, and technical member makes the court equipped enough to know what is there in the valuation report. They can study and they can pass necessary orders. So if nowadays, if the courts find that there is something hanky-panky in the valuation report, or the integrity of the valuation report is subject to anything, then they can obviously stop that merger and seek clarification from the company and the valuer. Now the next issue, meeting of the shareholders. Earlier in old Act, 1956 Act, Companies Act 1956 Act, there was a provision that when we take the approval of shareholders of almost more than 75%, so what court used to do is court used to avoid and grant the company not to hold at the meeting of the shareholders and need not to take consent of all. So now in the new Companies Act, there is a provision under section 230 subsection 9. It says only you can avoid the having meeting of creditors when you obtain the consent of creditors subject to 90% in value. And the Companies Act 2013 is silent on shareholders' consent. So what the court is of view is, NCLT says that as Act is silent on the shareholders aspect, so despite you get an approval of 100% shareholders in a company, you have to hold a meeting and to take approval of the said things. Now coming to the appointed date part. Earlier in the old Act, appointed date could have been a future date and it can be a past date also. But in the new Act, it is specifically stated no appointed date can be a future date. As we cannot ascertain what will be the exact value of asset and liabilities which is going to get transferred in the transferring company in a future date, therefore no appointed date in a future is allowed as of now. Secondly, the provisional accounts. In previous Act, it was specifically stated while going for a merger, you need to only file the last and audited balance sheet of the company. So what we were doing, if we are filing a merger in the month of November, then we were annexing the balance sheet of 31st March 2019 and we were filing it. But now there is amendment in the Act which says that your petition should also have the financials. That may be provisional financials, but that should not be more than 6 months. So now what we have to do, apart from the audited balance sheet of the company, and if we are filing a petition in the month of November, then we have to prepare a provisional balance sheet within that 6 months time. Only then our petition will be entertained by the court. Last aspect I'll take is of stamp duty aspect. Stamp duty, this is the reason why mergers, many companies didn't go for their mergers, because once the assets and liabilities have been transferred to transferring companies, the assets which are being transferred to transferring companies are subject to the stamp duty. Whether now we need to understand whether the order of the court is an instrument or not, or it is what is the reading of the states, whether it will be added into conveyance deed or not. So the states like Maharashtra, Gujarat, Karnataka, Rajasthan, Chandigarh, Madhya Pradesh, West Bengal, and even our Uttar Pradesh, they are of a view, yes, an order of the NCLT will be in a conveyance, and the subject duty and the stamp duty will be payable on the movable and immovable assets which have been transferred from transfer to transferring company. So there is a judgment of Hindustan Unilever in Maharashtra. Delhi Towers judgment is in Delhi, and for UP it is Hero MotoCorp, wherein they have decided yes, the order passed by the NCLT or by the appropriate court will be a conveyance and the stamp duty is chargeable. So restricting myself to Delhi and Uttar Pradesh, the stamp duty payable on the movable asset is 3% and on immovable asset is 6 plus 1%. Secondly, the thing for stamp duty is only for the state of UP. The UP has already, the only state in the India which has given a notification wherein a wholly owned subsidiary is going to get merged with a holding company. Subsidiary company is going to get merged with holding company. So whatever the assets will be transferred from holding company to, subsidiary company to holding company, they will not be subject to the stamp duty. So I'll conclude my session here. Thank you, and I'll take leave for the day. Thank you, Karuna.
Hello. Ashutosh sir, can you hear me?
Please, please.
Sir, I have a query regarding this. Actually, while going through the content of this webinar, I have read about some contractual obligations.
Correct.
So this might be a very silly query, but I was not able to resolve it. That due to this coronavirus pandemic, many contracts are going to be impacted. and that is very general situation. So is there similar compliances which are going to be happen afterwards? Like if I'm going to sue any person because of the very general reason, because of this coronavirus COVID-19 pandemic reason, he is not going to fulfill any of the duty which was mentioned in the contract. So is the court or the legal rules could be same which was earlier before this coronavirus pandemic, or they are going to consider this as well?
Yes, Aditi, rules are going to be same. Some of you see generally when we are drafting the contract or the agreements, we are putting a clause of force majeure clause in every contract or agreement. Force majeure clause is a clause whereby it says that we generally say that in little words, the act of God, the act which is beyond the power of parties, wherein without the doing or non-doing of any party, it happens, and it is beyond the control of the parties. So if there is any such event like this scenario where the contract cannot be fulfilled or the conditions of the contract cannot be fulfilled due to this pandemic, then obviously force majeure clause can be invoked, and courts are also having a liberal view for it. But obviously contractual obligations will flow.
Okay, this is going to be same. Thank you.
And for any other query regarding mergers and acquisition, you can please mail to Karuna ma'am. I'll try to revert on it within a day's time.
Sure, sir. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Karuna ma'am. Thanks for inviting for today.
Okay, thank you very much, sir. Thus, going by all the above discussions, one should be able to understand that corporate restructuring aims at different things at different times for different corporate houses. And the single common objective in every restructuring exercise is to focus on the operational synergy, efficient allocation of managerial capabilities in order to attain the overall goal of an organization, which is profit maximization. At last, I would like to express a profound gratitude to Ashita ji and Mr. Vineet Goyal in this webinar. I would also like to thank Dr. K. Modi Foundation and our respected director, sir, for his moral support and guidance. I'm happy to express my vote of thanks to all my student coordinators and all those who have made this webinar a success. Thank you all, and have a nice day. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, ma'am.